the Peepettes, this is your boy XII here, coming to you live on YouTube.com, broadcast yourself, as well as inyourheadonline.com, the place to be to get all your wrestling news and information. And on this edition of the Secluded Paradyme, it's going to be a very special edition, as I got my homeboy Stevie Kirby here. Bring it down, man. And we are going to talk about pro wrestling during the 1980s. And Stevie, this is my favorite era of pro wrestling. You know, me and you, we've been boys ever since undergrad. We were over at USC upstate, and we talk about 80s a lot, whether it be music or whether it be wrestling. And pro wrestling, as many of you know out there, was so damn awesome during the 1980s. It's incredible. It's hard to even put it all into words. And we're just going to talk about an array of topics of the 1980s. We ain't going to make it real long for you guys, but we are going to make it interesting. And Stevie, they know a lot what I like about the 80s. I love the Four Horsemen. I know you're a big Horseman fan. I know you're a big fan of the WWE. So, you know, for the peeps and the peepettes here on the Paradigm, just give me your take on this kind of stuff that you like during the 1980s, man.
Is that picking up?
Yeah, it's picking up.
Okay. I'd have to say the main thing I really loved about wrestling in the 80s was the peak of Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania.
Oh, yeah.
Hulkamania, I think, is what brought wrestling to a wider audience, because Hulk Hogan had something special. I mean, he reached out to kids, he had charisma. I mean, a lot of people really loved him, you know. And I think that really, you know, just spawned a big array of wrestling phenomena in the 1980s. I mean, I remember it clear as day. I mean, I was a little kid, but I mean, you know, that to me was probably the grandest moment of wrestling, because you had him as being the only person to ever body slam Andre the Giant.
Oh,
I mean, before then, nobody could slam Andre the Giant, and then finally at WrestleMania 3, boop, oh yeah, done deal.
Well, see, what a lot of people forget is that Andre the Giant coming into WrestleMania 3 was technically undefeated in the world of professional wrestling ever since he debuted in 1972 or 73, I believe, when he was the Wrestler of the Year. But he had been going for several years, well over a decade before being defeated, and all of a sudden this phenomena of Hulkamania comes around, and Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, they tore the house down at Shea Stadium, I believe, around the early 1980s, 80, 81, or somewhere around there. But it was never of the magnitude of a WrestleMania 3 that occurred at Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, Michigan in March of 1987, which destroyed all records. 93,000 fans, dude. That's more than a Rolling Stones concert in Pontiac Silverdome or something, man. It's just incredible. But, you know, that's when the WWE was at its apex, in my opinion, man. I mean, the late 1980s, cats like Hulk Hogan, of course, we talk about Andre the Giant, Big John Studd, Ultimate Warrior, who later came around several years later in the company. I didn't even mention Macho Man Randy Savage, one of the best wrestlers of all time. And we had Macho Man and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 to tore the house down for the Intercontinental Championship that so many fans remember, and wasn't even overshadowed from the Andre and Hulk match. But more, I think it shares its equal weight with the Hulk and Andre match in some regards for historians, because we still remember that match. It was pretty damn cool.
I remember it feeling as well, because my uncle at the time, this is my mom's brother. He had ordered it, and you know, I remember it clear as day. I mean, Andre the Giant gets slammed by Hulk Hogan, and then if you want to go down on a timeline a little bit more further, I think one of the biggest next WrestleManias was I believe it was WrestleMania 6, where Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan finally had their showdown.
Oh gosh, me.
And that was just, I remember that one clear as day too, because we got that pay-per-view, and it was very, very interesting, because I mean, there was not much animosity built up between Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, but so many people wanted to see them go at it. And Ultimate Warrior, it did end up beating Hulk Hogan, which, you know, it's no big deal, but I mean, that was probably one of the best ones next to Hulk Hogan slamming Andre the Giant.
Oh yeah, I mean, WrestleMania 6 in Toronto, Canada in 1990. I know we're talking about wrestling in the 80s, but this was an extension of the 80s, entering into the 1990s with Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan just tearing the house down in in Sky Dome in Toronto, now the Rogers Center. And I remember watching that as a kid. It was really my first WrestleMania that I watched on pay-per-view as a kid. I remember I was 5 years old, and I was a huge Ultimate Warrior fan growing up. But I was still, you know, I still love Hulk Hogan.
What's there not to love about either one of them?
I mean, it was the clash between good guy and good guy, and so many fans want to see it.
Yeah.
We don't see anything like that today, dude.
You really
I mean,
don't.
it's just. I mean, when was the last time we really, really, truly seen a good guy versus good guy face each other? And I know many of you may be thinking about The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 26 this year, and I can see how you may think that, but both of those guys, Shawn Michaels and the Ultimate Warrior, have had in their past heel turns, but the Undertaker is the ultimate good guy, but Shawn Michaels, many people like him, many people don't like him. But the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan were generally loved by so many people that the clash was just amazing. And many people liked to crap on that match, but I thought it was just fantastic. And I think it was an extension of what the WWE was back in the 80s with a lot of the good stuff that they were putting on. And don't forget, just to rewind some stuff about the 80s, we just talked about Macho Man Randy Savage. And
yes, definitely.
Macho Man Randy Savage is the kind of guy that, in my opinion, is kind of forgotten in a lot of circles between wrestling fans in the internet wrestling community and maybe an extension outside of the community. Partly because we haven't seen him in the ring in over 10 years. So it's been a long time since we've seen Macho Man in action. But when he was in his prime in WWE in the late 80s, he was as untouchable as anybody, especially when he became the WWE champion at WrestleMania 4 when he defeated $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in the finals to win the championship. And many people have crapped on WrestleMania 4 too, but personally, I've got the original WrestleMania 4 VHS from Coliseum Home Video. I absolutely love the damn thing, and I love the progression of the tournament. It really made Macho Man look like a big star. I just want to what are some of your views about Macho Man, man?
Oh, I loved him. I mean, Macho Man was just one of those guys. I mean, you know, his character was different from everybody else. I mean, he was very confident. He wasn't too awfully arrogant either, and I mean, he always had Elizabeth with him, and I mean, you know, he was just a one-man army, and I'm going to tell you right now, in the heyday of wrestling in the 1980s, Macho Man Randy Savage was a really, really good person that you could always expect to get some good entertainment out of him. From the flying elbow to whatever else that he would throw at you, man, boom, he delivered the goods.
You know, I mean, some people may talk about, you know, Shawn Michaels with that high elbow he had, but I don't think you guys
no, I think
Macho
he probably
Man, you know.
stole that from Macho Man, if you know the truth.
No, probably did. You know how a lot of wrestlers like to do that these days, and they even did it back then. But Macho Man is just a great character. And speaking of him, you think he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame? I know there's been speculation between, you know, him and Vince, whether or not he had some relationship with Stephanie McMahon. Personally, in my opinion, I think a lot of his hostility for Macho Man towards Macho Man by Vince stems from the fact that he left the company in 1994 right after the King of the Ring, and he was the last major big-time superstar that they built in the 80s to leave the company, and he went to WCW, and I think Vince really hated that because he wanted Macho Man to be a broadcaster for a long time. But given the hostility, you know, Vince has forgiven a whole lot of guys for a whole lot less.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think he's going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Well, I don't really know because, I mean, you never know what Vince McMahon's liable to do. I mean, he's very unpredictable. I mean, and I'm going to be honest with you, he's kind of a self-centered person. I mean, that's the character I see on TV, and as we all well know, that's what he portrays, as a self-centered prick.
Yeah, I mean,
in every way imaginable. But I would surely hope that Macho Man Randy Savage will be in the Hall of Fame because he was just as huge as any of the rest of the guys in the 80s. He really was.
I mean, he's one of the best of all time. And every time, I mean, you go back in the annals of history, you got to look at him and Rick Steamboat in WrestleMania 3. You got to look at him at WrestleMania 4 winning the WWE Championship against DiBiase, as we talked about earlier. You also got to look at the Macho King stuff that he did in the late 80s.
I remember that.
And in his awesome match with the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7 that gets overlooked a ton. This was a career-ending match that was just fantastic. And in my opinion, it's one of my top 5 WrestleMania matches of all time. I'm not even stretching it. The Ultimate Warrior seems like he's always in really good matches in the WWE, no matter what year it was or what era it was. It seems like he was in matches that meant something and made you care.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Now, if you don't mind me asking, I know that's way back, and I don't believe I ever saw that, but I mean, did Macho Man come out on top of the Ultimate Warrior did?
Alright, this is what happened. In WrestleMania 7, it was a career-ending match. Macho Man had cost Ultimate Warrior the WWE Championship at Royal Rumble 1991 against Sergeant Slaughter. And remember, Slaughter and Hogan had that match in WrestleMania 7.
Oh, yeah.
And Hogan ended up winning. But to make a long story short, weeks passed by, and finally both guys, Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man, decided to, alright, we're going to have a career-ending match here, and the winner, career is over with. Macho Man loses the match to Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7, so his career ends. But that wasn't the end of the story. The conflict that built in with the match, the progression, the psychology was just tremendous. I know it's been a while since you've seen it.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, whenever you have a chance to see it, especially y'all out there, definitely go see that match. But, like I said, to make a long story short, Ultimate Warrior won. Macho Man lost. Sensational Queen Sherry, who was managing him, turned her back on Randy Savage, and the lovely, late, beautiful Elizabeth came out from the crowd over the railing and saved her man by throwing Sherry out, and they both reunited, and it was a beautiful thing. It made a lot of people in the LA sporting arena cry. It was a beautiful, beautiful story. It's not and I can understand that, because many fans don't remember that match when people talk about as the best. But if you see it and you see how it was built, it's easily one of the best. I thought it was the best match of WrestleMania 7, quite frankly.
Probably so. I mean, you gotta imagine. I mean, that was a peak of Macho Man's career, and you know, things happen. And I mean, it was probably built up that way to make it good. So I mean, in every way imaginable, you are probably correct on that.
All right, guys, and now we're going to switch gears a little bit. And we're not going to focus on the WWE per se, but now we're going to talk about the NWA WCW. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and many of you do know, I'm a huge WCW wrestling fan. I've been a fan all my life. Jim Crockett Promotions is my favorite promotions ever of all time. Even better than the WWE, even better than WCW late 90s, even better than the WWE you see today. I love Jim Crockett Promotions. There's a faction that we both know that occurred in the 1980s around these parts, here around Charlotte and around the entire Mid-Atlantic area, called the Four Horsemen. Talking about AA Arn Anderson, the Enforcer, Nature Boy Ric Flair, woo! And of course, The Rock, Ole Anderson, and Tully Blanchard, my long-distance cousin. And what are your opinions about the Four Horsemen, man? I mean, everybody pretty much knows how I feel. I think they're the best of all time. And also, if you haven't seen my first edition of the Secluded Paradyme, chronicling the 1990 Four Horsemen in World Championship Wrestling, make sure you do that now. You'll learn a lot from that period of time, detailing the Four Horsemen. A lot of good insight. In case you haven't seen it before, go ahead and check that out. But what are some of your thoughts, man?
Let me tell you this straight up. As a child, you know, as we were children in the 80s and we caught on the tail end of it, it's no big deal. But I'll tell you this much.